All right. So we'll call the meeting to order at 6:05. And we will start with a territorial recognition. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. All right, moving on to the agenda approval. Be it resolved, the board approves the agenda for meeting number 4. Is this meeting number 4? I don't even know at this point. We don't really need to have a discussion on this, so we have a mover. Okay. Nobody. Austin. All right. I will second that.
I can't find the function.
Oh, okay. All right. All those against. Okay, I'm assuming that was a mistake, Mark. All those in favor, so unanimous vote here. Yeah, okay. Next, minutes approval. Be it resolved, the board approves the minutes from meeting number 3 and the 2 special meetings. Mark as the mover, and do I have a seconder? All right, I'll second that. Usually so many people throw up their hands so fast. Anybody against or abstaining? If you weren't at the meeting, well, there's 3 meetings here, so it's not all separate. Whatever, don't worry about that. Although I'm assuming everybody's in favor. 10-0-0. All right. So now,
Hannah, I will change that for you. My bad.
well, there was one meeting I think Hannah showed up like in the middle, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be there, but then I did end up coming.
Okay, cool.
Okay, August 11th.
I'll
I'll
get
actually
it.
make that
Shout
change
out
right now.
Hannah. All right, the next one is we need to motion to move into camera. Do I have a mover? Austin and Alex as the seconder. All right, so
We just need a vote.
Oh yeah, that's right. All those against? Nobody. All right, assuming that's unanimous.
Bring up the document.
All right. Is Andy doing this? Yeah, Andy, take it away.
Okay,
Is there a document to share?
there is a document to share. I was going to ask if
There is. Sorry, it's not.
Okay.
Okay, here it is.
Okay, cool. So basically, this is what our month looked like. I'm not gonna go over every single point. If you do have any questions, please let me know. I don't think Fatin is here right now, but if you have questions for me, Austin or Yasmin, about anything, please feel free to ask. But some of the highlights that I just wanted to touch on. One, we went to Suds. That was cool. We did our campus store photo shoot and my face was everywhere for a quick second. And then we did a lot of Badger Fest stuff. Like a lot of Badger Fest stuff. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free. But this is basically what we've done. I don't know if Kaylee, you want to scroll down to see Yasmin's list and Fatin's. Yep, that's basically it. This is all I wanted to show everyone. So good stuff. Any questions? I can't see.
Any questions for Andy or Yasmin or Austin? Fatin's not here, so
Ben has a question.
Ben,
Yeah,
go ahead.
don't do that. You do that. Sorry, James.
Thank you. So I'm just wondering if it would be possible for executives to like produce like reports similar to those that used to happen in previous years, where it would be like individually from each executive, they'd produce a report. And and I know that we have it so that there should be those reports, or at least, reports from executives at least 4 times a year to the board. So I guess I'd like to know what the plan was in terms of the reports going to BUSAC, and then also how to create those reports, I guess, for the board, because we meet a lot more frequently than BUSAC. So I'd just like to know, I guess, when basically when you can get like a bit of a longer report into the board. Yeah, I'll start there. Thanks.
All right, if any of the vice presidents would like to answer that, go for it.
Oh, shoot, sorry.
Andy, do you want to do that or do you want me to do that?
Nope, you're good, Austin.
I think that's up to the board. I mean, at this point, we are reporting to you. So if you would like it more frequently, or if you like it more in depth, or however, then that's your prerogative.
Thank you, Austin. Any other questions, comments, or concerns for the executive update? Faison, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, my bad. My bad. I was just gonna ask, like, what are the reports gonna be about though? Like, are they just random? I know I'm not making one. I mean, am I making one? Okay, yeah, that's not the question. The question is, what are they gonna really like be about though? Like, are they just more in depth about what you guys are gonna be working on? Is that what it is? I guess that's a question for Ben.
Ben, if you would like to answer how much more in depth you would like them to go.
Yeah, so the perfect example is what executives produced, just going a few years back. And I guess from my experience, what was really, helpful and valuable is if you look in the years like 2017 to like 2019, around then, what the executives produced to BUSAC. Those kinds of reports were generally very well done, and it would be like maybe 2 or 3 pages with some, not always entirely paragraphs, but generally there was, a decent amount of detail, and that would generally cover a 2-week period, but monthly is fine. And I think if the executives just take a look at those and then, come back next meeting, we can maybe just compare and then kind of adjust as we go along, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember these from BUSAC. I feel like they're fairly similar. I do think, yeah, Ben's right. They were a little bit more in depth. They were also point form, and then they just kind of like basically all these points that are here of each executive doing, there'd be like a little bit of a description underneath. And I remember sometimes there was like pictures, or like if there was like a video posted somewhere, they'd link the video to their report. It is a little bit more detailed. As Austin said, it is up to us as the board as a whole. So if there's any discussion, if anybody feels like these should be more in depth, like how I just explained or how Ben explained, please raise your hand and make it known that you think it should be a little bit different. Andy, if you would like to say something, go ahead.
So currently, just for the context, I'm the one that's slapping all of the points on the on the doc. So if we are going the report route, can we please assign each exec to be responsible for their own? Mostly because I would prefer if I didn't have to do everyone's, and putting that together. And also, if you do want us to go in depth about something specific, this month, please, we are open to speaking about anything that we're doing right now. But yeah, I just would prefer if I didn't have to, if I didn't have to handle the reports for each exec.
Yeah, I think Annie made a good point there where if we do want more detail, right now they're open for questions about anything on the report. So more in-depth detail is available to us. Aisha, if you'd like to go ahead.
I think Annie makes a great point. I think for the point of making sure everyone has a generally fair workload, it would be nice if we wanted to, even if we don't agree on having an extensive update document, it'd be nice if every exec could put that in. That way, if we do have any questions, we would want it to be as accurate as possible. I don't know how much detail existed in the old ones. I would appreciate if there was some bit of detail, because I was going to ask, for example, like, what is the GSV rally planning? I know there are a few things on here right now that we are familiar with, but just a general idea or review of some of the things included here, I think would be helpful, just so we're not all opening a document that just has a list of things and we don't fully understand or are, privy to that information that's being shared with us.
Thank you, Aisha. Ben and Andy, are your hands up from before, or would you like to say anything else?
Yeah, so I guess just in terms of Andy's point, yeah, like I knew no idea that you were doing them like yourself for everybody else. So, I've never seen the VPFA have to do like the other kinds of reports from the other execs. But in terms of like actual reports, they should definitely do it on their own and report, on their own as an individual, because at this point they were elected by students and should show that accountability. And yeah, I guess in terms of James' point, what I noticed is that BUSAC since has been over the years kind of, you can say, diminishing whatnot in its oversight of things. That that means that like the reporting wasn't as detailed, but since we are the board, that's why I was hoping for like what the reports used to be at BUSAC, like back in kind of before your time, 2017, 2018, around then. Just because, we are the board that they're reporting to, and should have as much detail. And from that detail actually will allow all the board members to then come up with better questions and so forth. So, that's the kind of the thinking behind, that kind of reporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I think that is a good point. The more detail there is, makes it easier to make better questions. Yasmin, if you would like to go ahead, feel free to do so.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I agree. I think it's up to you guys if you want us to add more detail. I'm totally fine with that. I just wanted to clarify that all the execs write their own points. We just forward them to Andy and she puts it in a document. I just kind of felt like the board members thought that we don't really do much in that sense, but no, Andy is kind enough to put them in a document for us, but we do write the points. And yeah, I personally, speaking for myself, I completely do not mind giving a description of what that work looks like as well. I do hope that it would be once a month though, and not every 2 weeks, just because I feel like it would make the meetings a bit longer, and the whole point of us making board every 2 weeks is to kind of lessen that time. So
All right, Andy, is your hand up from before?
No, it isn't.
What?
I was also gonna make the point that I don't write their points. I don't monitor what each exec is doing. I do want to clarify that. However, I do bother them to send me them. So, and then I put together the document. I kind of clean it up and then I send it to Kaylee. To clarify that. And then also to answer Aisha's point or question, sorry, the GSA rally is something that Austin and I are kind of working on. And it's the gender and sexual violence rally. So through USA, their theme this year is to focus on gender and sexual violence. So during the week, I don't know what the Monday is, but during the week of the 22nd of September, that's like Consent Awareness Week. And then I believe the 20th is I Believe You Day. And then the 22nd, all of the USA schools are planning to hold some sort of rally in whatever capacity that they want to do. So right now, Austin and I are working with HRE to organize that rally and have speakers. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Austin, for the clarification in the chat. But yeah, so that's what we're working on right now. And also just in terms of like the lack of detail, that it's kind of the point of sending in like the point form list. If you don't really know what we're talking about or you don't know what we're doing, was kind of to ask. I do think it would be more helpful to put more details. And if you would like a report, we can fully do that. I would say though, to reiterate what Yasmin said, it is quite busy in the office, especially during this time of the year. So sitting down and writing a full report on everything that we're doing might be a little bit time consuming. But again, like it is easier than sitting here during an entire board meeting. So again, with that being said, I will stop talking. I hope that answered your question. If anyone has any questions about what we were doing in August, now's the time.
Thank you, Andy. Aisha, if you'd like to go ahead again, go ahead.
Thank you. Annie, thank you for answering my question. You do make a great point. It is a busy time. I just want to address two things really quickly. So Yasmin mentioned just, you know, how long it takes to get sending and, and Andy also mentioned that it takes a while to send it in. If we do agree to have more detail, little detail, I think it'd be nice to, whether formal or informal, to set up a timeline so that everyone is able to ensure that no one is taking the other end of it. So whether it's Andy having to rush through putting it together or the execs themselves feeling pressured to have it done in such a short time. So I think that would help the process. I appreciate you and all the work you've all been doing as execs. I just think that it would be important to just have everyone have a little bit of detail, especially considering that we are going into this school year. We want to make sure that we're getting as much detail as possible through the document. So when we do come into meetings, it's as efficient as possible. But also, it's not just sitting and reading a point list and not understanding what's going on. So I'm not exactly looking for a full 2-page paragraph, 1 page. I think just like you've just explained the GSA rally, like a basic 3 sentences so I get a good idea of what I'm reading and not just seeing something, I think would be appreciated.
Carly, if you would like to go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of just want to reiterate that. And then I think more detail would be really helpful, just so that we're not looking at something and going through each item or avoiding going through each item because we think it's going to take up time, but still not really knowing what some things might be. But maybe I think the point form list of what you've been working on like works, and maybe just underneath each is like a sub point of like what it is. So like, so you could just say like a professional development conference or something, like brief explanation. So then we kind of know which items to ask questions about in the first place, rather than just like going through and being like, what is it?
Thank you, Carly. Austin, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to expand the list, and I'm sure the other execs are too. So that being said, if board's all right with that, then moving forward for our monthly updates, we'll do a kind of what Carly just said, do kind of same thing point form, but we'll have like a dash and then have a description for what it actually was. So then everyone has that. If anyone has like anything against that, feel free to speak up, but that's how I'm going to move forward until someone says otherwise. Thanks.
Ben, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think it would be, really helpful to for the executives to like review what the past reports have been that it looks like Haley's going to send. But yeah, I just think that there's definitely, there could be definitely multiple examples of the tasks that there might be context that could be even helpful to students who aren't on the board, because I feel that this, part of this kind of transparent process is for also just, regular students to be able to see these updates. And for example, on the current update, there's points such as the executive election restructure, which is actually, an overwhelmingly complex thing going on. We all know the context of it, but for example, if it's a student, I would hope for these reports to be readable by them, and for them to have that context without needing to, have to follow up and have work on their end in terms of figuring out all this information, and it would be, readily available to them. So I didn't want to add that. And yeah, it's just a reminder that it is like a full-time professional job, and I think that there are many things that shouldn't be put in point form. Oh my gosh, sorry. My cats are acting crazy. Okay, sorry, please ignore that. Yeah, and so there's many points that should be expanded on, and to definitely look at the many examples that can really showcase what that reporting looks like. So anyways, that's the point I just wanted to bring up, and with that bring up that hopefully, like, again, students who aren't on the board would be able to also view these reports. And I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Aisha, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you. I think Ben just alluded to what I was going to mention, but just on that note, Ben, if we are asking or requesting for them to do 2 separate reports, I do think, considering that as board members, we have a certain level of confidentiality that we have access to with the documents sent to us, then the reports would look different. So for example, what you just alluded to with the election and the that change being made, there's some things that I'm guessing that the board, the execs would not put up in an update that they're sending out to the student population when it's something that has confidential information or is something that is currently going through the process of being discussed by the board. So it would be one thing to ask for our own updates that we do receive with detail that helps us have clarification, and then an updates that students can access. But on that note, I don't know if it's something that was changed or if the current execs are not taking it over, but I know last year the execs would do a Instagram like thing. I don't know what the word I was looking for, like an Instagram just summary of what they've done during the school year. Roundup, thank you, Austin. But yes, that was something that they ended up doing. So I feel like we can also do that, because as much as it is a full-time job, they are still students. Some of them are still students. And we want to make sure that we're having a good like work-life balance.
Thank you, Aisha. Andy, if you would like to go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not trying to make this conversation longer, I pinky promise, but can I just get clarification on what we are supposed to be getting ready for you all in terms of like the report? Because I know Ben just said potentially 2 reports, or Aisha may have said 2 reports. I'm just a little bit confused at what we are supposed to be producing now.
Do you want me to clarify?
I,
I think I know what he's saying.
yeah, go ahead, Kaylee.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you guys are doing now, adding a little bit of information at the BUSAC meetings. There's only 3 of them. So at the BUSAC meetings, you guys would typically also give a report. It would probably just be a summarized version of kind of the key points. You could probably copy and paste some of the points. And then of course, any confidential information probably wouldn't be in these reports anyways, because we don't have this part in camera. That would have to be separate. So there's only 3 BUSAC meetings though. So that it's not as time consuming, I guess, because there's fewer ones.
Thank you, Kaylee. Ben, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, so just to clarify from my end, I wasn't asking for 2 reports, just for what was presented today, for example, to be replaced with something from each individual executive that resembles what has been done in many years ago with BUSAC, when there was bi-weekly meetings, and with the purpose of including more detail. And yeah, again, like Kaylee said, it wouldn't have anything confidential in nature, and there's lots of examples to look at, but just write up of what has happened in the month, and essentially this is something that I believe is important, that should because, for example, like the Instagram posts, that it just can't cover as much, and it's also in terms of students who, for example, want to look at how the board keeps student executives accountable. It's important to see that kind of the process of this kind of detailed reporting, because they might want to not just see what the executives are up to, but also how the board members are making sure that there's that accountability. Right, that's why we have this transparent process. And yeah, there was some, obviously some problems last year where like the Instagram posts weren't supposed to be like, that wasn't enough, that wasn't supposed to like make any kind of replacement of the reports. But unfortunately, with like all these things that happened last year, we never got around to improving that. So yeah, it's nothing that like the board passed in terms of the information that we wanted to look at last year. So hopefully that clarifies things for my end. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Austin, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, just clarify that myself and the rest of the executives are on board. We'll do on board figuratively, that we are good to write a more in-depth, detailed roundup. So I'm sure that everyone will be all right with that. And unless there's any other questions for our update, then we should be good to move on to the next item for time's sake, since it's already 45 minutes into the meeting.
Yeah, so if the execs are agreeable to that, I don't think we need to make a motion tasking them to do it. They seem like they're pretty open to it. So I think, Kaylee, let me know that still have not heard back from campus security. So good call, Yasmin, on moving on to something else. But Celine is ready to come talk to us about policy 500. So
I just messaged her to join, so just give
all
her a
right,
second.
we will invite in Celine. Woohoo.
Hey, James.
Hey, Austin.
Just, can I speak?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Unless the board is wanting a presentation by Celine, would we be agreeable to just asking questions if we have questions, and like if we've already done a read through of the policy because unless we want to actually go in and have her explain each line change, but I feel like a lot of them are pretty self-explanatory, so we could probably skip that for time.
Yeah, no, I was gonna get to that when Celine was in here. Yeah, I was just basically just gonna say that we've had these edits, like we've seen them before and we've had the chance to go over them. We have the documents, it's very long. There's no point really in going over anything specifically unless Celine thinks there's something that she really wants to touch on. Otherwise, I was just gonna open it to questions. Good with everyone? Cool.
Okay. She did say she was ready, and I just texted her if she can join now, so she may just need a minute. I know she had her nephew with her.
Also, Yasmin, you know this shoe giveaway we were in? I just checked because they announced the winner today. We did not win. Yeah, took a big L. No Travis Scott shoes.
Yeah, oops, sorry. I was trying to look for a sad emoji to react to that, but that was the best thing I could do. So.
They're like right here on my desk, and then I was like, oh my god, that's announced today. And then I looked, we did, yeah, no.
Oh no.
Those shoes are so expensive. They're like over $1,000.
Do you guys want to do the locker request now?
Yeah, is Celine's still not ready?
It's pretty simple. She hasn't responded. I'm sure she'll join in at any second.
Okay.
But
Robert, you can go ahead with the locker capital request. This agenda is just going to be all over the place. Woohoo. Okay, go ahead, Robert.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. So I'm bringing forward, and I presented this to our executives as well, a capital request, and it's to approve a maximum of $41,113.86 from the Busu Capital Fund in the first reading to replace the lockers in the Shimon Tower. So my kind of joke on that is that the lockers in the Shimon Tower are older than me. So they were actually installed, likely for September of 1970. So I was born in September of 1970. So we're thinking 68 or 69. So they're actually older. So over that period of time, just like me, they're a bit beat up and they don't close anymore. They're rusting, things of that nature. So when we look at this over a period of time, we look at this right now, we have some surplus funds remaining to be able to do this. And then if we look at the period of time it takes to, basically recover these funds, it's a relatively short period of time. Kaylee, if you can scroll down just a touch there. It's about a 5.5 year payoff period to basically recover. We're not really tremendously interested, at least I'm not, in making money on lockers. It's providing students a service. The Shimon Tower lockers are the most utilized lockers that we have at Busu. They represent a significant portion of the sales that we have each year. And again, we're trying to provide a service for students. And so from that perspective, I think it's time to replace these at this point in time. And the request is before you. Why I say a maximum of is that we actually have 3 quotes provided for you. One quote is with shipping. The other quote is without shipping. And then one quote is just the high quote. So we're not going to utilize the high quote. And what happens with shipping is it's called freight on board, FOB. So when the board approves this for the second time, we will then get an accurate shipping amount. So the one company delivers themselves, the other one uses a shipping company, and we would essentially choose the lockers, which are pretty much the exact same from company A or company B. Both of them are in the same sort of ballpark at this point in time, but it will be no greater than the quote provided that included the shipping. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Robert. Any questions, comments, or concerns for Robert? I think this is pretty straightforward. Austin, if you'd like to go ahead.
I'm just going to motion for I'm just going to motion, the motion that Robert had, and then we can do the discussion after that, just so then it's already motioned.
Okay, what was the motion?
It's at the very top of the document.
I don't see a document on my screen. Let me just look it up here. Okay, let's share it. Cool. Be it resolved, the BUSU board approves a maximum of $41,113.86 from the BUSU Capital Fund in the first reading to replace BUSU lockers in Schmann Tower. Austin is the mover. Carly and Mark, are your hands up to second, or were they for questions? Carly's the second.
Mine was the second.
All right, Carly or Mark as the seconder. Whichever one you want to put down, Kaylee. All right. Carly, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Sorry, I wasn't unmuting. I just had two really quick questions just for clarification. So it says in 2020 to 2021, BUSU sold 125 and 148. Does that mean like sold as in the old ones have been sold, or like that is the percent of them that were used for the school year?
The latter, through you, Mr. Chair. So that was the number of lockers that were rented to students in that given year.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. I was just trying to like picture that. I was like, have they just been like sold to somewhere else? Okay. And then the other question was just, do we have an idea of a time frame of when these would be done? I was just curious.
So we do. So we should be able to get these all done by the end of, so we could sell them for January 1. So they should be all shipped and installed by the time we get to the end of December, and then they can be sold in January.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other questions, we can move on to the vote. Anybody against? All right. Assume that one's unanimous. Is Celine ready, or has campus security got back to you, Robert, if you'd like to go ahead and speak?
So the first thing that I have is, and I'm going to ask, so speaking to Carly's point, is that the sooner we can confirm that BUSU is committed to the lockers financially, the sooner Brock can move forward. So we can do this one of two ways. So one is we could wait till the next board meeting and get our second reading, or we could use an email ballot. And again, Ben had an objection in the last meeting to an email ballot, so I want to put that out there now. But I'm wondering what direction we would like to go. If it's an email ballot, we can get a decision probably early next week. If we wait to the next board meeting, then we'll be ordering those lockers when that next board meeting comes about.
Carly, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say I am in favor of an email ballot. I feel like knowing that we know what the max amount that will be spent is, because the one quote does include shipping. If anything, we just might happen to save money, but if not, we know what that amount is. So I have no problem with that. I did actually want to ask a follow-up question, just because it just came to mind. So if those ones are being replaced and will be rented for the first, will we have other lockers that are available for students? Like, will the other ones be available for the fall term? Just curious in case anyone asks.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Robert.
There are a limited number, so the lockers that are actually still functional. So the lockers that are not functional in Schmann Tower, that we just can't rent because they're broken and they won't lock. There's a zip tie on them. So that's how we're dealing with those. So we will rent some in the Schmann Tower. When we upgrade, then the student will just swap out, right? So we'll inform them, we'll swap them out. The locks that are actually on most of the lockers are BUSU locks. So we actually know the combination. We always ask for permission before we do anything, however. And then there are still lockers that BUSU has in both Welsh Hall and in Thistle Complex. So those lockers are still available for rent.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Carly. Thanks, Robert. Alex and Austin are good with the email ballot in the chat. I think we've done it before. I think that's like, okay, unless anybody's completely against it. Nobody's really made that known, so I'm assuming everybody's good with the email. All right, moving on. Have we heard back from campus security?
I have not. I don't know if Robert.
So I have messaged him on Facebook Messenger. I've messaged his wife on Facebook Messenger, and I've reached out to the director of campus security via text. So I'm continuing to pursue. I looked through all of my email to see if his cell phone was anywhere, and it wasn't. So I will continue to push forward with that.
I haven't heard from Celine in a second, but I would recommend maybe we skip to the CASA membership, as it's probably a quicker discussion than the bylaws one.
Yeah, we can do that. First, Ben, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I did wanted to ask if we could have a quick recess.
Right, do you want a motion for a break? Okay, Mark, if you'd like to say something.
Oh, I was just gonna second.
I'm just waiting if Ben wants to motion, because
Yeah.
I don't know if Ben
10
needs
minutes.
to run to do something, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Whatever.
Yeah, about 10 minutes. Does that sound good?
All right, Ben's motioning for a 10-minute break. Mark is seconding. All those against.
Can we just go to my stuff instead so we can get this over with?
Celine is actually just going to join now.
By
By the time she gets in.
Oh, we motioned for the break. So, it looks like it's gonna pass, Austin. So all those in favor of a 10-minute break. All right, so there's a lot of you that aren't voting. Are these abstentions, or should I restart the vote from?
Can we restart the vote for a break, James?
Yeah, all right, all those against.
Yeah, if Celine's here, I'm actually on board to just continue.
Okay, so I mean, I think from the votes anyways, and I think it doesn't pass.
Yeah, Chair, I'll rescind my motion.
Okay, thanks, Ben. That was great timing by Celine. All right, so we can let Celine into the meeting, I guess. Oh, well, hello, Celine.
I did. Oh, that's weird timing.
Great timing with everything today. Everything is going just according to plan. All right, Celine. So because it's a very long document and we've already gone over it before once and we've had it able to look at it for a while. Really, we don't need you to go over the whole thing. If there's like anything in particular that you think that is very important to go over, like you can do that. Otherwise, we're just gonna skip right to questions. If anybody has any questions about any of the changes, yeah, so we'll go ahead with the motion. Be it resolved, the board approves the policy 500 as presented. Austin's the mover. Alex is the seconder. Any questions for Celine? I actually have one sent to me from Aaliyah, who cannot be here today. She is asking about section 15 for the club's election policy, and then subsection F, and then subsection 2. It says clubs cannot recruit members during the election season. And then Aaliyah would like to know, how will they be keeping track of this? I know usually they just send the ballot link to anyone who wants to vote. Will they be giving logins to every active member, or will it be done like BOOSU elections? So just some clarification on that one? If you'd like to answer that, Celine.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, and also, hi, I came in as you were saying hi. With the elections, I guess to simplify the answer, it'll be similar to how BUSU elections are run. So at the end of January, before election season officially starts in February, the clubs need to submit their membership lists through a Simply Voting link form. So once they submit those, myself, along with the club's coordinators, will be creating all the elections for the clubs. So at this point, I have disabled on Experience View for clubs to create their own club elections, because it got too out of hand where elections were rigged. And in order to make sure it's all fair across the board, all clubs have to conduct their election through Simply Voting. So that'd be myself and the two clubs coordinators who are not involved in clubs, so they wouldn't be a conflict of interest. And they will be creating the elections for clubs going forward. So very simple, very similar to BUSU in the sense that the ballot would get sent right to their email. And since we have the membership list from their submission in January, they can't add anyone in. If you want further clarification on that, just let me know.
Thanks, Celine. I'm good with further clarification. It was Aaliyah's question, so that's the answer I'm going to text back to her. Ben, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you. So my question is just about the definition of active member. So it says, participating in at least 70% of club meetings. And I'm just wondering, why it seems arbitrary. And, I think each club should be able to define for themselves based on the specifics of their club, what would be an active member, because of the differences between events and meetings and so forth that are different with every club.
Thanks for the question, Ben. Celine, if you'd like to go ahead.
So is the question my reasoning behind the 70%?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for the question. So initially when I brainstormed the policy with the previous CPC team, we kind of landed on that 70–80% range. However, we know that all clubs don't operate the same. So from the last board meeting made a valid point, and I am agreeable to having the definition as set by the club. So if we say the club executives have to define what the active member means. So let's say they only meet twice a year, and that would mean that only to be an active member, you have to have attended at least one of those meetings, which would be 50%. So I'm open to having the definition up to interpretation, as long as it's set by the club executives and put in their club guide and/or constitution. I hope that answers your question.
Ben, do you have your hand up to say something else?
Thanks. Yeah, no, I would just agree that the definition can be amended to, instead of saying participating in at least 70% of club meetings, saying participating according to the club guide or something like that.
Okay, sounds good.
That's agreeable with me, and I don't think anybody has anything against that being changed. Make it be known. I think that's fine. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns for Celine? Someone's gonna raise their hand right at the last second. Every time I go, seeing none, someone raises their hand. All right. Seeing none. Thanks, Celine. That was nice, easy, and quick.
James, sorry, just one thing I realized is
Go
it's
for it.
in section 5E. There's just like a similar, I guess it's graduate student clubs, but it mentions the same thing in terms of 70%. So I just wanted to check in if the same thing could be applied, where instead of the 70%, it would be, you know, amended to being in the club guide.
Yeah, so I would just let GSA know of that change as well. GSA clubs operate slightly different than the undergraduate student clubs because every single member needs to be confirmed of student status through the GSA. But I'm sure because they're working with our policy that they'd be fine with that change as well for definition of an active member.
Okay, thank you. And then I do just have one last follow-up from, I did mention this last time in terms of at the very end in section 16, mentioning like for conflict issues beyond the scope for this policy will be directed to HRE. And I just think that should just be, you know, broadened just in case, you know, Student Life and Success or another Brock department could support. And I'm just wondering if that could be changed.
Yes, for sure. So I can broaden it to include many other resources, but as we continue to grow and change, and I hope that the policy doesn't change too often, I would put and other resources as available by the university. So it's open-ended in case a new resource is introduced, say next semester, it's still available to the clubs if they needed to use it.
All right, try this again. Any other comments, questions, or concerns for Celine? I literally called it that something was going to come up right at the end. Anything else? Seeing none.
I have a question, if I
Go
can
ahead.
answer.
You did it again. See, right at the end. You do it. All
Well,
right.
I didn't know if I had the opportunity to ask questions.
Fair enough. Fair point. All right, go ahead, Celine.
So with these changes that the board would agree on, should I present then a final draft via email or no? Yeah, okay, so I can move forward with the changes. Okay. Because I will move forward with changing these as I do need the policy finalized, especially as we're going into a new school year with in-person events. So I want to make sure the clubs are prepared. But yeah, that was my only question.
Yeah, I think you're fine to go ahead if it's just slight wording. Ben, if you would like to go ahead.
Thanks. I would just say it would be beneficial to see a final copy once it's done, as long as it's not too much work. Yeah, that's my preference. Thanks.
Carly, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar, just that it doesn't seem like any of us have like too many problems. It was just some slight wording changes. So I think what you've got now, it seems like if we approve this, then any slight wording changes we're still gonna be happy with. But it would just be nice to see the final copy kind of sent to us as it's like right about to be kind of distributed in general, just for our reference.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think I don't think it's necessary for Celine to come to another meeting and present it again. I think we could probably do that by email if everybody's agreeable to that.
Yeah, so since I'm going to be MIA next week due to Badger Fest, I will send it in by tomorrow. And if everything looks good, then I would expect no response. And to make it easier for reading, I will go back and re-highlight things in red that I've changed based on this conversation. So it's an easy find in terms of edits I've made.
All right. Thank you, Celine.
Yeah, well, thank you. I guess that's it. Otherwise, if you want me to stay, I can stay.
Yeah,
I'll adjourn.
You're good to go.
Okay, thank you guys. And thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night, and I'll see you all at Badger Fest.
See ya.
Thank you, Celine.
All right, so we did move the motion, but would you guys prefer if we just wait for the final one from by email tomorrow and then vote by email? I think that'd probably make more sense, right?
Wait, can you repeat that or explain that to Phil? I'm confused.
So we moved the motion, like we already have a mover and a seconder. But because we made a couple edits here, would you guys prefer we just get it sent by email tomorrow and then vote by email, or should we still vote right now? Austin.
I mean, the changes weren't very contentious, so I'd say let's just vote right now with the changes being assumed that they were made. And if there's ever an issue, then we can bring it back up if it wasn't changed properly.
Fair enough. Maybe, yeah, that's fine. That makes sense. Anybody not okay with that? Make it known in the next 5 seconds.
I was just gonna say, I agree that we probably should vote because we sent her off to make changes. So we should probably vote that we wanted those changes.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right. Anybody abstaining? Anybody against? All right, unanimous vote. All right, update on our presenters that have not answered. Anything have you heard back yet, Robert?
I'm literally got his cell phone number now, so I've now texted him. So I will keep you posted.
Okay, cool. All right.
Way to go then.
Are we gonna skip to which one is like the lightest here? Should we go to the lightest one first, or should we just go to the bylaw one?
I mean, let's go to CASA first. That's lighter, and depending on what happens with Brock's security people.
All right. Item number 9, CASA observer membership. Take it away, Austin.
All right. So thank you, Kaylee, for throwing that up there. So everyone, when we went to SUDS, I had a conversation with the executive director of CASA. CASA is the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations. It's like the federal version of USA. Pretty much the same kind of setup as USA with policy papers, lobbying the government. They have a decent relationship with the government. And it's a organization we used to be in. We left. I'm sure Robert and Kaylee can give you a little bit more information of why we left, but it was basically that we were dissatisfied with how much we were spending on the organization, and they weren't really putting an emphasis or focus on Ontario. After we, like, there's a lot of schools that are from like out east or out west, and we were the last Ontario school to leave. Like there was, like after we left, no Ontario schools were in there anymore. This year, when I was having a conversation with the executive director, she told me that they are putting a emphasis on re-engaging with Ontario schools, and they now have 6 Ontario schools who are either currently observers or in the process of becoming an observer. We would be the 7th if we decided to become one. And being an observer is essentially letting us have access to all of the benefits of being a member. We would be able to go to all the conferences, we'd get all the training, we'd be able to get access to all of their resources, like everything. They would set us up with meetings with MPs and senators for the next 2 years, completely free of charge. It's a free trial. During that time, we would have the ability to leave at any moment. We are not bound by any contract. If we just decide, if we decide today to join as an observer, and then next week we say, hey, that was the stupid decision, we can leave, snap at our fingers. So there's absolutely no risk there. And this is a chance for us to actually re-engage with federal advocacy. Currently, we have almost no federal advocacy efforts at all. We don't have any federal group that we deal with. So this is how we can get back into that. And after 2 years, we would have to decide whether or not we would want to be a full member, or if we will have to part ways with CASA and figure out what we're doing then. But yeah, anyone have any questions?
Any questions, comments, or concerns for Austin? This seems like a pretty sweet deal to me. Ben, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you. So it's great if the observer membership is free. Now, I would just think that we should wait until we've been observing for a certain period of time before approving funds to be used for CASA. So for that, be it further resolved, I think that could be looked at another board meeting, if that makes sense.
Can I reply to that, James?
That's a good comment. I was literally just going to go to you, Austin, because you didn't really touch on the funds. If you'd like to clarify what the funds would be for, just for context for everyone, go ahead.
Totally. The funds are actually not going to CASA at all. The funds is actually what is going to allow us to participate in CASA. So CASA, I should re-clarify also, it's not 100% free. They are charging a $100 per person to come to each of their conferences. The first conference is in Ottawa. So the money that's at the top for the Be It Further Resolved is the $8,750 in travel, $8,750 in accommodations, and $2,750 in per diem. The way I got to that was taking the two conferences that we would be participating in. The first one would be Lobby Week. Lobby Week is the, I forget what date it is, like November something to November something, 7 days in Ottawa, where we'd be engaging in lobbying like MPs, members of parliament, senators, alongside other schools across Canada. So the reason why it is that price, it's $3,500 for the accommodations in Ottawa for 7 days, because it's $250 a person, and there's going to be 2 delegates sent. That's what they would requested us if we were participating in that. So it'd be $500 maximum. I'm going to be honest with you, likely the 2 people who go would probably share a room, so to be back down to $250. So that price wouldn't actually be the full amount. I just wanted to make sure that we're on the upward end, and so we didn't go over. So the $3,500 would probably end up being around like $1,750 for the Ottawa trip. Then it was going to be, I said $1,000 per person for travel to Ottawa. Realistically, we'd probably take a car and drive all the way, and it would be one of the delegates' cars, and then we just have to cover gas. So $2,000 wouldn't actually be the coverage, but that's how much flight said if I were going to fly next week. So that's why I said $1,000 per person for that trip to Ottawa. So realistically, we would be nowhere near that price. I just want to make sure we're on the upward end. It'll probably be less than 1,000. And then I said 1,050 for per diem at, I think it was, I did $75 a person per day, which is what we currently have as our rate, I believe, unless Robert wants to correct me on that for per diem. But so realistically, the first trip to Ottawa I had as 6,550, which would probably be closer to around 3,000. But I put it on the upward end to make sure that we weren't going to go over. Then the next trip is the annual general meeting or general assembly for CASA, which is where all the Canadian student societies across the country go together and meet. Kind of the same thing as like how USA has its annual, or has its the AGMs, the general assemblies, to go approve the policy papers. In order to actually see the process and observe the process of CASA, we would have to go to these conferences to make sure that we actually see what's the process is like and if it's right for us. So this one's in Halifax, and I did the same thing. I was looking at flights. On the upward end of the flights to Halifax were around $1,000 a person. On the lower end, they were around $200 a person. So I did the upward end and said $2,000 to be for 2 delegates. Then it was going to be 5 days. So for 2 people, ended up doing $750 for per diem. And then I did $2,500 for accommodation. I did accommodation at $250 a night. Realistically, it's not going to be anywhere near $250 a night. The only reason I did that was because it's the same price as the Ottawa trip. So I wanted to make sure it was on the upward end, so we weren't going over budget. So the overall, that trip is $5,250. Realistically, it'll be probably closer to maybe 3,000, depending on flights, depending on what our accommodation is at. So the 12,000 overall will probably be closer somewhere between 5,000 to 8,000. And that is just paying for us BUSU delegates to travel to the conferences to participate in CASA.
All right, thank you, Austin. That was very informative. It's nice to see people preparing the funds before a conference. Ben, would you like to, I don't know, maybe go back on what you said or touch anything if that helped out your concerns?
Thank you. So, I mean, yeah, it helps clarify some of the financials, but I think what's really important that we should consider is the is a prioritization of our advocacy, because post-secondary education is largely under the provincial context, and I think with the current structure we have, it's more important for the VPA and BUSU as a whole to focus on provincial advocacy, especially with regards to OSAP and many other things that are like these larger concerns that I remember going back, being on BUSAC when we canceled our membership with CASA. Part of that decision came from the kind of lack of effectiveness in terms of delivery on federal advocacy and not wanting to see that money wasted. And so I believe that this is something initiative that could be brought forward for next year after the restructuring is approved with the bylaw changes and so forth, and the advocacy is more well balanced among the executives and so forth. But I think this year it's more important for there to be that focus on provincial advocacy. So I'll just throw that out there. Thanks.
Chair, may I reply to that?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Just one thing I would like to throw out, and I'm sure anyone has any international friends. Currently, visas are a massive issue for international students to get, and there's actually a massive wait list, I guess, and students are likely going to not be able to start studies on time this year because of that, and that's something that would be addressed through federal advocacy. Also, looking at OSAP, I'm going to stop there, but overall we have some priorities that we would be able to push federally, so I just wanted to let that be known. Anyway.
All right, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Austin. Carly, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions. But first I want to say that internally I am in favor of this. I think it made sense to leave CASA when, there wasn't really anything to do with Ontario happening and we were the last school. It didn't really make sense to be there. But if we're seeing a shift towards including Ontario schools, then I don't think we should get in the habit as a school of waiting to follow the pack and waiting until we're the last Ontario school to join. And as a more medium-sized university, we often get outnumbered at USA in the first place with just some of the bigger schools in their individual kind of agendas. So I don't think we should, wait and just follow some of the bigger schools. But I did have just a couple questions that I'm guessing Austin is probably the one to answer. So through you, Chair, I just wanted to know, so you listed kind of the ways that it would be the same as being an actual member school compared to an observer. what would be the things that like would be different? So like obviously we wouldn't be paying the fee, but like what differences are there?
Through you, Chair.
Go ahead, Austin.
So the way the executive director explained it to me and the way it's written in their policy, observers get literally the exact same thing as a member, except they can't vote. So we can go to everything. We just have no vote or say in any of the decisions. We would get a vote and say if we became a full member, though.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. And then, yeah, even more so in favor of that if, you know, it's a good opportunity to see if it's what we want to continue with while only really paying for what will end up being students having an experience, whether or not we end up staying there. It's not like just spending money on funds and voting for if we decide not to stay. And then I did just have one other question, and I'm not sure that this is necessarily something that has an answer right now, but maybe if you had any ideas. Because I know with like USA, we have kind of a team that's selected and then led by you or like one of the VPs. And if you had any idea if it's going to be similar, like if you already have an idea of if it's going to be two of the VPs that go or the president and a VP or selected from students, just curious.
Go
ahead, Austin.
Thank you. So the way so I actually currently 2 of the 6 observer schools are actually other USA members, and I was talking to them on what they do and what other schools do. And the executive director of CASA also said like what is typical. Some schools do the president and a VP. Some schools actually send their entire executive team. I think that's overkill, to be honest, sending an entire team. But what is currently being looked at is 2 VPs.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Austin. Aisha, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Austin, for sharing. I just have a few questions, and I think Austin's already alluded to one, which Carly mentioned was what 2 members would be going. I think that it's a great idea for VPs to go. I'm just concerned about how that brings in all the concerns, if anything. I'm hoping that the VPs would find a way to connect with all the students so they're able to ensure that they are bringing in as many concerns as possible. But like I'm not very particular about who's going. I'm just being concerned about, you know, who is going and what information are they going with, or how are they advocating for the student population. And also, Austin, you briefly mentioned that you got to speak with other execs that are currently have been back at CASA. Did you what was their review? Do you think that it's worth it? What have they been able to share, like something that is particularly notable that convinced you that it was a really good idea to go back? And also, is it possible for us to go for the one conference and then come back and make a decision or feedback on if it's worth it going to the other one? Or if we choose to, sorry, I have a lot of questions. If we choose to go for both and approve the payment for both, are we sure that if there's something that we don't like, because the executive for CASA is saying that they're open to feedback, if there's something that we don't like, do we think that they would be very open to making changes and accepting feedback so that we're not, you know, just going back in and going over the same rotation of leaving and coming back?
Yeah. James, am I good?
Yeah.
Cool. So speaking to a couple schools, I spoke to the University of Manitoba's president. I spoke to Laurentian and spoke to Trent. Manitoba is full member. They told me, actually, the entire time we were at SUDS, they were trying to convince us to join. This is before I even spoke to the executive director. They spoke about CASA very, very highly. Laurentian was also telling us that they think we would be a great fit for the organization. They are an observer member currently, and they went to the conference in Calgary that happened. back in July, and they were saying that it was a great experience, and it's also a great alternative for SUDS for future years, because they don't necessarily do professional development there, but if we do decide to move forward next year to professional development as just a at a like campus kind of level and get workshops for us, then that's something we can do to network with our other student unions across Canada. On the note of like the two conferences, if the one is in November and one is in March, if I mean personally I think it would be easier just to approve both right now, but if we if you decide to bring this back up to board, you can bring it up anytime prior to that conference, and you could tell us to not go to it, I guess. But I personally think if we want to actually fully experience what CASA is like, we should go to all the things in order to actually know what it's like. Because we've only partially participate, then we'll only partially know if it's right for us, because each conference is a different thing. The first one is setting up the priorities for the year, which happened in Ottawa. The second one is in Calgary, where it's like, the first one is training, and that's in Ottawa, and it basically is teaching you kind of all the things, kind of like how USA does its summer school. Then we have Calgary, which set up all the priorities for the year, which is what we'd have to lobby based off of CASA's priorities for the year. So that's also another thing, Carly, that you asked earlier, what's the difference? We don't have a vote, but we also miss the chance for us to pick what we lobby on, because that happened in Calgary back in July. They decided what they were lobbying on for the year. And then LobbyCon happens in November, which is when you actually meet with everyone. Prior to that, all the delegates who go get training on how to lobby and how to conduct themselves properly. So that's another training opportunity for us. And then Halifax is when they do their annual general meeting, and that's bringing teams from across the country again. It would be 2 people from our team there, and then it would be us. It would be kind of same thing as the General Assembly for USA of voting on policy papers and stuff. But I think I answered all your questions. I don't know, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you, Austin. Carly, is that good? Or was that Aisha's question? That was Aisha's question. Aisha, is that good? Assume yes. All right. Ben, is your hand up from before?
I do have something else to say.
Go ahead.
So it's just, based on kind of what Carly mentioned, and if Busu is getting like, I forget the exact words that were used, but like kind of, outnumbered or whatever at USA, that to me shows that we do need to prioritize provincial advocacy and, find a way to have Brock students be heard just as well as the bigger schools, Western, Queens and so forth. And, that takes a lot of work. So, again, I think this is a good proposal, but to me, it seems that then we're going to have our VPA be stretched too thin, especially, considering what you just mentioned. We didn't even have a say in what this year's priorities are anyways. So, I mean, like that seems to be a problem to have this then approved for this year. I think we would need to fix, our lobbying with USA, or at least improve it, and then also make sure that we can be involved with, or at least, know of the priorities prior to approving this, student money on it, just so that we don't end up wasting it. Thank you.
James?
Go ahead, Austin.
Just want to clarify that regardless of if we approve this before Calgary, we never would have been able to prioritize or been able to vote or even give input on what the priorities are, just because we would be an observer. So like by the name, we observe their process of how they do everything. We're not actually getting a say in what the organization is going to do. We would be able to participate in it, but until we actually became a full member, we wouldn't actually be able to say, hey, this is a priority that we want to move forward. Also, on the note of USA, we don't necessarily get ganged up on, and we don't get our things across. Like this year, it was one of my main priorities, which was student financial aid and affordability, was put forward. And that is one of the things that we're lobbying on this year. So we are actually getting our priorities done. The general assemblies are definitely very hectic, and there's a lot of things that you have to give and take, but every school gives and takes. We don't get absolutely every single thing that we want, but neither does Waterloo. And Waterloo has 13 delegates when we have 7, and Waterloo is the largest delegation. So we should be all right. And also this year, CASA's priorities are financial aid and mental health. So they are big things that I believe our board would probably be on board with. Not to mention that we don't actually have any other options for a federal group. We can join the Canadian Federations of Students, which CFS, but CFS actually makes it impossible almost for you to leave their organization. So, and currently there's schools across the country who are trying to leave. Like I believe in September, there's going to be a referendum for the University of Manitoba, University of Toronto, Dalhousie, Carleton, and I know Windsor are all trying currently to leave CFS. Laurentian is also trying to leave CFS currently because they're not a great organization, and they've actually bankrupted Student Union in the past by suing them out of existence. So they're not a federal lobby organization we'd want to join. And the other option is UCREW, which is what the University of Toronto is also in, Western, Queens, Ottawa, Waterloo, and McMaster. The problem is that Brock is not allowed to join UCREW because it's only allowed to be the top 15 research universities across Canada, and Brock is not one of the top 15. So that's like the UBCs, the McGills, like U of T's, Western. So like we're not allowed in that. So our only option is CASA. So if we don't join CASA as an observer, we're just not going to have a federal advocacy route. Also, speaking of like OSAP has a federal portion. So the federal government, which is currently doubling student grants right now because of COVID, is contributing to OSAP. So financial aid is something that is pertinent to us, I believe, because affordability. The federal government has a say in that as well. And that's why I believe that we need to have some sort of federal advocacy portion. And as the VPEA going on my 2nd year, I can tell you that this position can definitely handle it. Like whoever's in this next year would be able to handle it. I will be able to handle it this year, especially with if we're going to restructure a bit. The VPFA's portfolio was pretty light. So if we do end up switching it to VP University Affairs and they focus on advocacy on campus, then that takes away that burden from the EA. And that's actually what other student unions do. Like Western has a VP University Affairs and they have a VP External Affairs. So it would make sure the workload is balanced and we'd be good. Actually, Robert, if you have anything you'd like to add, like I know we spoke about this before, but what's your opinion on federal advocacy, where we are at, and CASA as a whole? You were in the same meeting as me when we're talking to the executive director.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, if you're agreeable.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so speaking a little bit on the Austin piece, is that the part of the challenge with federal advocacy is it's really quite challenging. So Canadian Federation of Students, Ontario, okay, so that is one option for us. And because they have CFS national. And in the province of Ontario, Algoma, Carleton, Guelph, Lakehead, Laurentian, Nipissing, Ryerson, Toronto, Trent, Windsor, and York are all members of that. So you're either a member of the CFS group or you're not. So you can't really join them unless you're in with both feet.
Now, if we look at UCRU, it's for the 15 research intensive universities in Canada, and it's a federal lobby group. And that is University of Toronto, Western, Queen's, Ottawa, Waterloo. I'm missing one, and McMaster, my alma mater. I should have known that one. So those are your options. So there's like us, Laurier. I'm trying to even think, UOIT. Like there's a very small number of schools that actually don't belong to any federal lobby organization right now. And that is part of the challenge. Like, you know, we would not be able to go to Ottawa and meet, for example, the Minister of Immigration, for example. They just won't see us. We're too small. They will see CASA, they will see CFS, they will see UCRU, but they won't see Brock. And they probably won't see Brock and Laurier. You have to have sort of an organization behind you. So that's kind of my comment on that. And certainly, I've had an opportunity to chat with Austin, and I was also a participant in the conference call with CASA. The current executive director is also from the province of Ontario and served as an elected student at Western. And so she's from the Ontario marketplace. She knows what Ontario, you know, what challenges Ontario has. She has good energy. So that's kind of my comments. But again, I'm happy to take any questions as well.
Thank you, Robert. All right, so we can move on to Carly. If you have a question, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a few that I had written down, but the first one was just going to be about what the priorities were. Because I know Ben had brought that up as a concern, but you did kind of touch on that, and mental health and financial aid have kind of been pretty standard with the advocacy we've done at Brock and provincially. So it doesn't seem like it's, despite us not being there to, you know, put our, I guess, voice in, it doesn't seem like they're, you know, we're pushing for something we don't believe in if we do join. And my one thought is kind of, it seems like a good time to kind of get in and see how we feel about it. And if it's not costing us anything other than sending some students to these, if even just to learn like, okay, yeah, this isn't really what we think is best for the school. At least we wouldn't be being charged the fee. And it's otherwise we just kind of put it off a year, and then I'm fairly sure we still have observer status for 2 years. So it kind of just keeps pushing off that federal advocacy piece. Where at this point, as far as I understand, we just wouldn't be paying for the next 2 years, and we'd have any time before that to kind of reevaluate. I know I haven't brought up of like going to one versus the other, but seeing as they're different conferences, I was kind of looking at their website quickly just to get an understanding, and it seems like they're they have very different points. And so to see if it is worth our time, it seems like it makes sense to go to both. At least that's what I would be in favor of. I do think it would probably be worth if like just reevaluating after like this year after both conferences to see if it's worth doing again for another year, and, you know, paying for students to go on those trips once we kind of have a better understanding. But rather than pushing it off. And I did just want to clarify that I wasn't trying to say that we don't do good at USA. I feel like we had a really strong last two USA conferences, at least the ones I was at last two, and I thought they went very well. I was more so just trying to say that we are like numbers wise outnumbered. Like there are schools that have a lot more delegates because they are bigger. And I hate seeing when like it seems kind of like Brock will just wait, and not BUSU specifically, but more the university as a whole, like just wait to see what the bigger schools do. I don't really think that's necessary. I think we have a voice, and we have the ability to advocate for our students. And I don't really see the harm in seeing if there's good work we could do federally. And then if it's a couple conferences and then we say there really isn't anything for us here, we use the opportunity for the free, opportunity for our execs to learn, as well as like possibly get some of our voice out there, and maybe we think it works, or maybe we don't, but we're not paying the membership fee. So I don't really have anything against it. And it just seems like a good opportunity.
All right, thank you, Carly. I would also like to say that proportionally, yeah, we had like numbers wise, we were less at USA, but I think proportionally we did very well at getting things that we wanted, like across and voted for. Andy, if you would like to go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of speak to Ben's concern about the EA position. So in terms of, oh, yay, Carl. Sorry. In terms of the EA being able to handle it, one, I mean, it is technically within the EA's portfolio to be like lobbying at all levels of government. So currently, I would say again, like obviously Austin can speak a lot better to this, but I just kind of want to support what he is saying in terms of like the fact that the position can't handle it. We do a great job provincially, I would say, and then municipally. This year, there's going to be a ton of opportunities because we are having a municipal election in Thorold and whatnot. So again, that federal piece, yeah, sorry, I will kind of wrap it up. But federally, I think that piece is missing largely from the EA's portfolio. Again, the restructure, we did just lay out all of the responsibilities of all the positions and look at what each is doing. And I think just from my poli-sci background, the federal portion is going to be huge as well. And I think this is a good opportunity to have like kind of dip our toes back in the CSA or CAS. I don't know. Anyways, that kind of realm. And whether we are voting or not, thank you, Robert. Whether we're voting or not, I think it's good to kind of start making those connections, networking, and then potentially at some point, maybe kind of rejoining and getting that vote again. But I think that portion is for sure missing from the EA's portfolio right now. But yeah.
All right, thank you, Andy. And we will move on to Aisha, and then we will move on to the in-camera session because, you know, we probably want to get to that before he leaves the waiting room and then takes another hour to get him again. Aisha, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a few questions. Like everyone said so far, I think it's a really great idea. We technically get to go for free. I'm just concerned with, I'm hoping I can get more clarification on what being an observer means. So we can technically not like change policies, but does that mean that like we can share ideas in a meeting and that's taking into consideration, considering that you did mention like they have a lot of important items on their agenda for the year. I feel like if we are going to be an observer, like Carly mentioned earlier, I think a year is a good trial position because if they're able to get things done that we believe are really important, it would be nice to observe for a year, but also, you know, get into that position of being able to make changes that we think are very important. But I just wanted to know, like, do we get to vote on what gets passed as an observer, or do we get to share in the meeting? And then if we do get to share in a meeting and, you know, it's VPs that are going, does Austin, and then if Andy gets to go or whoever else is going, how can we ensure that all student demographic concerns are included when we're speaking? Are we going to hold like a poll or something? Just making sure that we have everybody on board and we are, you know, keeping everybody in mind when we are speaking for students.
Austin, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. On the note of like how to get everyone's perspective. So because we don't actually, as an observer, we wouldn't get a say in what the priorities are. We would essentially be given the training alongside all the other delegates, some who would be observers, most of them whom would be full members. And we would be just kind of given the talking points, we'd be given the how to lobby essentially. It's kind of the same type of training that I do at USA with lobbying provincial politicians. But this way, so because we don't get a vote, and like as your other question, as an observer, we just observe the process. We get to participate in things, and I would be able to raise my hand and talk. But because I'm not a full member, I would be last kind of to put my say in, because I'm not actually a part of the organization. I'm just kind of watching the organization do its thing to decide if I want to join. That's what BUSU would be in. We would just be watching them to decide if we're going to join. So since we don't actually get a say as an observer, we wouldn't be able to be giving our perspectives, which are like, they wouldn't have to listen to our perspectives per se at the end of the day. Like, they have indicated they will, but they don't have to. And because of that also, and because of the priorities already being created and the training for that already being created, and all the other schools across the country who will have their own delegates from a wide array of backgrounds, those like perspectives would be coming from the schools who are full members. We would be just kind of given like we'd be kind of taking along in the ride per se. It's like, I'm not going to be going to them and talking about mental health and give different perspectives of mental health. They already have the specific points on mental health to talk about. Like, same thing with USA. Like, I would have specific asks from USA to talk to the government, but once those asks are created, I don't actually have any time, like anything to change. Like, I have to ask for those specific things when I talk to the politicians. Anyway, I'll wrap that up there.
All right, thanks, Austin. So we're just actually gonna table this discussion till after the in-camera session, because we do have him waiting in the chat, and I think Robert is saying it's probably best if we just jump to that. So I know Ben said in the chat that he did have something else to say, so we'll just table this discussion and vote till after. So I'm gonna motion to move in camera. Will anybody second that? All right, thank you, Hannah. Hey, Kaylee, are you going to stop the recording? Yes. All right, so back to the CASA discussion. I know Ben said he had something else in the chat. I just want to point out, Ben, when you raise your hand, you tend to never put it down, and it's kind of inefficient for me to always ask if your hand is from before. So if you could maybe try to get in the habit of putting your hand down and then putting it back up if you have something else to say, I'd very much appreciate that. If you would like to go ahead and say the last thing you had, we'll end it there, unless anybody really has something pressing that they would like to ask Austin about it. The floor is yours, Ben, if you would like to speak.
Thank you. Yeah, and sorry, sometimes I have like these follow-up questions that I'm not sure if it would go next or so forth. So that's why I keep my hand up. But anyways, yeah, so I guess, there was one more thing I wanted to say, and I'll say that, but then there's another kind of point that could be in this conversation that I wanted to bring up that came up to mind during our conversation with campus security. But to go right back to the CASA, so, I believe we need to, focus provincially in terms of the fact that partial funding comes federally. And actually, that's where there tends to be it's easier for that funding to be increased. Like, as Austin mentioned, it was doubled because of COVID and so forth. So that seems to be not where there's the cutbacks. The cutbacks or the clawbacks, as USA calls it, tends to be coming from the provincial funding. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Now, I guess the other thing is, so, Andy raised a good point about VPA doing, municipal election stuff. So what I was thinking in terms of the motion was to for the second part of the motion rather, because it's more so just the funding that I'm worried about. The actual observer status is fine as long as we're spending money wisely, but if that second part of the motion could be approval for basically that the second why am I not thinking of the word, second conference not be approved until we kind of review what happens at the first, like through a presentation and so forth, the first conference in November. So that's my suggestion for the motion.
Austin, you can go ahead.
I'd like to motion to be it resolved what I had on my topic sheet as written. And if anyone has a second.
Sorry, I'm confused. Are you putting forward a motion or are you?
The motion that's on the topic sheet. It's at the very top, Keely.
Essentially called the question, right?
You're calling the question.
Yeah, well, no one else had their hand up, so I was just motioning.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry, let me share the agenda again. Let's see the motion. Okay, so it's these two, they're together.
So
I think
Sorry,
it was
Austin,
Alex
were
who
you
seconded.
motioning them?
And I think Alex seconded, yeah.
just for clarification here, Ben made a suggestion, but
This
because
is just,
nobody, it wasn't a motion or anything, so we can continue on to this because Austin did make a motion, right?
yeah, no, the motion that I just put forward is the original.
Yeah. All right. Anybody abstaining from this? All right, Austin is abstaining. Anybody against?
James, sorry, I thought we were going to go to discussion. Like we seem to have already had the discussion.
So Austin called the question because he was.
There was nobody left on the. He didn't call the question because we would have to vote whether to actually call the question, but there was no one with their hand raised left on the speaker's notes, so we went to the motion.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm just talking because I did make a suggestion, like James said.
Yeah.
Hoping to hear others' thoughts. You know, hoping I could get somebody else's thoughts. That's why I didn't make a formal motion to amend yet, because I just hoping somebody else would speak in it as part of the discussion. Thank you.
Carly, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, clarify to make sure, because it's kind of been a bit confusing. So I want to make sure I understood what Ben's thoughts were before I guess, comment. It was that you were hoping to see it voted as two separate items, correct?
Yeah, and in the sense that at this meeting, we're only approving the first conference, and the second one would be after we hear about how it went at the second conference.
Okay, thank you. I might have some thoughts, but if Austin wants to go ahead and it's okay with you, Chair, then I'm
fine. Austin, you can go ahead.
The reason why it's written the way it is, and the reason why I did it like this is because in order to actually observe the process of CASA, you actually have to participate. Like you would, if for us to adequately see what CASA is like, we have to participate in all aspects. Every conference is a different thing. Going to lobby week is going to be completely different than going to the General Assembly, because those are two very different things. And I'm not going to be participating in anything besides speaking to politicians in lobby week, where the General Assembly is actually, which is the second conference, is what's going to get us the nitty gritty of how CASA works behind the scenes. So those are very two different things. And that's why both of them are together. And we're not going to be able to decide if this is the organization we want to join next year or the year after that if we don't go and participate in everything. So that's why I would suggest we just stick with it how it is. And back to Carly.
It's a very good point. I actually really like that point by Austin. Carly, would you like to speak again?
Yeah, thank you. That I think offers clarity from both of you. I wonder if it would be worth like, should we, it seems like everyone is in favor of at least voting for the first one. I guess if it made sense to vote on the first one and then just vote on them separately with still having discussion about the second one, because I do see Austin's perspective on why we should, I guess, include both. But I don't know if that makes it easier.
I think they should be voted on together, to be honest. Anything else, Carly?
No, that's all.
All right. Get to you in a second, Ben. I'll just say personally, I think Ben made a pretty good point, and I think Austin gave a very good answer. Personally, I don't even know if I have a vote in this meeting because I don't know, like with the amount of people in it and stuff, I honestly kind of lose track sometimes. I would be in favor of this. I think Austin explained it very well that you need to see the entire, like how the whole thing works, not just parts of it. And I mean, that's quite a good answer, quite simple, and it gets to the point. Very good answer. Ben, if you would like to go ahead.
Thanks. So yeah, I mean, I'm just considering what Austin mentioned earlier in the sense that we have no contract. So if I think you said like even a week later we decide to not be observers, we can do that. And you know, in that sense, they wouldn't stop us from going to the first if we're not fully committed to the second. That wouldn't make sense. That would be highly concerning. So that's just all I want to bring up is that of course there could be the, you know, potential theoretically, but since, you know, I got to be honest, like I opened the portal a couple of days ago and this wasn't even there, and we're just you know, approving this right, both of them right now when we don't have to. And when this organization was problematic for student money previously, then I think it would be more prudent to simply approve one. So I get the fact that to be an observer, you have to go to the conferences, but we have the absolute right to retract from being an observer if there's any kind of red flags, for example, at the next conference or whatever. And I just want to make sure we're also considering that from a, you know, fiscal perspective in terms of also being willing to, you know, not pursue the second conference if there's any kind of problem. And I would personally like to see kind of a presentation to the board to get more information from the first conference. So that's my perspective. Thanks.
All right. I think your concerns about this organization being bad with student funds in the past is very like, it's like relevant, like it makes sense. I think Austin went over the fact that of this money that we're approving, like a very small amount, it's just a very small amount that actually goes to them, because most of this is just to be for like accommodations and travel. I think to kind of like find a middle ground here, I think we could also task Austin and whoever else attends to present to us, but I don't think that necessarily means that we should separate the approval of both things. Like, I'm sure Austin would be fine to come tell us how the first one went, even if we approve both. And also, if Austin goes to one of these conferences and he thinks, well, that was completely not worth it at all, and just because we approved the second one doesn't mean that he has to go to the second one. If he thinks the first one went so bad, in a way, he could just like not, you know, withdraw from the observer membership that we're approving now. Hannah and Carly, I'm sorry, but I think I'm just going to skip ahead to Austin here because he was the presenter for this. So I'll just skip ahead to Austin, then I'll come back to you, Hannah.
Just one real quick clarification. None of the money being approved will go to CASA. Not a penny besides the $100 for the delegate fee. And the delegate fee is just covering our like conference fees for like the venue. The all the money is going to either hotel, travel, or food from BUSU covering the BUSU delegates. And that's it, because I there sounded like there's some miscommunication there. And I just also want to remind everyone that this is us being able to attend and participate in a group that used to cost us $54,000 a year for free. And this is money that is in surplus right now. So the $12,000 that we're asking for is coming from the surplus. We currently have, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was like around 50-ish thousand of surplus funds in our advocacy budget. So that's money that is currently not being used for anything, and it's just sitting there year over year. Last year we had, I think it was $30,000 of extra funds that we didn't use last year. So this year, wouldn't be surprised if there's even more money that gets added to the surplus again. So it's not like we're taking this from a budget that is going to make us stuff small. And also bear in mind, we also did just approve $40,000 for lockers, and this is a net benefit for students as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Yeah, it's not being taken from anywhere else. It's just sitting there. It's kind of beneficial to the students if their dollars are actually being used for something, right? Hannah, go ahead.
Okay, the discussion kind of like offered clarification on this, but what I was wondering is more whether we would be, you know, approving them separately as more of like a budget-wise accountability thing, like making sure something like COCA doesn't happen again where like unreasonable amounts are being spent on things. But as for like the content of the conferences, I do think it would be beneficial to see like the differences between them and be involved with both of the discussions and activities that they each offer. It's more just like budget-wise, if we could kind of like, you know, view the budget from the first one, like how the money was spent, just to make sure like to keep the delegates accountable more than anything, rather than, you know, whether we think the second conference would be beneficial.
Thank you, Hannah. Carly, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say I am in favor of sending people for both of these, just kind of as we discussed, of giving it a fair shot. And we do have the opportunity to partake in it for free for 2 years. So why not make the most of that and actually see if it's worth it? But I was just curious, and I don't know if you know the answer, Austin, but through your chair, if Austin does have the answer, how far apart are the two? I was trying to look on the website and it seemed like maybe November and February, but I could be wrong.
The first one is November, and if we want to participate in November, we have to approve it tonight, because CASA would have to then approve our observership, and then they would have to get us the materials to actually register. And they said that, well, not necessarily tonight, but it would have to be done by like early September. The second conference is in March. I believe it's the end of March, or might have been early April, but it's next term either way. And so a lot of time between.
Okay, thanks. So I guess I'm just curious. I have no problem approving the two because, again, exactly as Jim kind of said before, like we don't have to spend the money because we approved it if something were to change and, you know, Austin comes back and says, actually, I changed my mind. This is not the right thing for us. We learned and we decided this isn't the right thing for us. We don't have to be like, oh, well, that's too bad. You're going to Halifax. But I was curious if there's a way to, I don't know if it needs to be like included or if we just kind of offer it as more so a suggestion of just maybe tickets and things aren't booked for the Second thing, I don't even know timelines wise if it would have happened instead, but maybe like the tickets and accommodations aren't necessarily booked until the board has heard about the first one, if that makes sense.
Can I reply to that, James?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, as a few people have mentioned already in like what you just said, Carly, that I would be in favor of that. So I'd be happy to hold off until board hears a little presentation and I'll be happy to give a little presentation on what the first conference was like, how I feel being observer is in CASA. Also provide a budget of how the money was spent from the first conference, if it was under the budget that I predicted, if it's above budget, and specifically what categories are going in from travel, accommodations, and like food. So yeah, I would be happy to put that together for board to see after the first conference.
All right, Carly, do you have anything else to say?
No, sorry, I should have put my hand down. And thank you, Austin. That was really helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Austin. Yeah, I put in the chat, can we approve attendance for both conferences, but hold off on approving the budget for the second conference until later. I was kind of getting to that. I think that's kind of what we're getting to. Before I go to you, Ben, I do think we are getting to like a good like common ground, or like, you know, oh my God, how am I blanking? I know it's like such a basic word. What's the word? Compromise. Oh my God, I couldn't think of compromise. Like, I think we're getting to a very good compromise here. Anyways, yeah, Ben, go ahead.
Thank you. So quick question, where's the so the November conference is in Ottawa, and then where's the March conference, March or April?
Halifax.
Okay, so yeah, like, yeah, I guess just to say, even though there's just the $100 fee going to CASA, which doesn't seem like much, there is the spending of sending Austin to go with all the travel and accommodations. So that's again why I think we should just be prudent and have this seem to be a bit more last minute. And so I would, I guess, support kind of what Hannah said in terms of holding off on approving the budget for the second conference until we hear about November's conference.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Ben. Seeing no other hands. I think we should leave it as is on the screen, and then put another be it further resolved that we task BUSU's representatives in attendance to present to us their activities and their budget from the first meeting before. This might be a little choppy wording, Kaylee. I'm just seeing what you're writing. Of their activities and budget. Yeah, okay, that works too. The conference budget. Before, like, the wording would be like before, like, planning the second one, but we would still approve the funding now, but
Before like purchases are made, maybe. 'Cause I think
yeah,
approving
something
the
like
funding means they can plan, which I don't think we
Yeah.
should leave it to be planned last minute when we know
before
how
making
complex it is.
final I don't even know. Everybody's got the gist of what I'm saying, or kind of, you know, okay, but I don't really know how to word that right now.
James,
Yeah,
may I suggest, be it further resolved, the delegates are to present to the board a summary of the conference and budget before purchasing materials for the second conference,
oh,
or
there you go, that's good.
purchasing flights and accommodation for the second conference.
Yeah, that works. There we go. That sounds nice.
And then that way board would also be able to see the things. You would all still be able to vote whether or not we move forward with the second conference. But we would have the budget already set up and that'd be approved. So it'll be less of a headache later on.
All right. So assuming that, because Austin kind of helps me here with the wording here, I'm assuming this is friendly to the mover Austin and our seconder Alex.
It is for me.
Okay. And Carly and Ben, you guys have your hands up here. Would you guys like to speak, or are those up from earlier? Carly.
I could quickly, I just want to say, because I know there was kind of two different points kind of being made of we should approve them both together right now or wait to approve the second one. And I just wanted to point out that I'm personally in favor of approving the actual budget, especially with that be it further resolved included, mainly because I'm thinking back to how budgets can be spent when someone goes on a conference where the budget is decided last minute. And of course, I don't think that we'd have that happen again. But if anything, if like in November, looking at the high point versus the low point of flights for March, like we're going to be closer to it. And if anything, the higher numbers, they're going to be higher. The closer you get to something, some of the options would end up more expensive. If anything, we'd end up approving more. So giving them an idea of how much would be spent on that conference now, so they are planning towards that without booking anything, I don't really see the problem with. We still, if at that meeting we say, oh, this is really not worth it, we can let them know they haven't spent the money. But it just gives them a clearer idea of what to be kind of working towards versus planning it last minute and spending somehow far more than you would ever expect.
Yeah, like almost double in flights. I think this is a good compromise. I'm just going to say that. Okay. Ben, go ahead.
The problem is I didn't really get enough time to review all this, right? So in any case, at this point, I just only want to approve the initial conference. So in terms of the motion and the vote, is this all within one vote, or how does that look like?
Yeah, this is all one vote. You can make a recommendation for to change it and ask if it's friendly. That's completely up to you.
Yeah, like I would just like to see in the second, like the first be it for the result, just the number be halved, so it would be 5,590 or that, sorry, 5,900 rather. So that would be my preference.
All right. Austin and Alex, is that friendly?
No.
All right. So I guess we'll vote on Ben's. I'm blanking on words today. Amendment. Jesus. We'll vote on Ben's amendment. Would anybody like to second Ben's amendment? All right, the motion fails. So Austin and Alex have made it clear that the second be it further resolved is friendly. So we've had our discussion here. We will move on to the vote. Austin, would you like to abstain? Or anybody else?
Yep, I'm good to abstain.
All right. And anybody against? Okay. So 7 in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstention. All right. We kind of jumped around the agenda. What was next again?
Bylaws.
Bylaws. All right. That's you again, eh, Austin?
Yep.
Go for it.
So everyone had, oh, by the way, I might disappear for a second because my computer is close to dying. But you see the topic sheet. It was on the portal for a few days. So if anyone has questions with the changes to the bylaws, the main changes are a title change for the VPFA to VPUA. That is to reflect the change from the VPEA being the head of advocacy to better spread that out between the UA and BEA. The UA would focus on the on-campus advocacy stuff, where the EA would focus on the off-campus stuff. That's also a good thing that CASA was added to the portfolio, so it would make sure that everyone has adequate things to work on. The UA would still maintain the CFO, signing checks, that kind of stuff. It's also standard, or it is a title that is similar with other student societies. Western USC has a VP UA. There's a couple other schools with VP University Affairs, so it's not something that we just came up with. They would stay on Senate, and that would be, and it's written that they are Senate, so that means that no other executive would be on Senate. It would just be them. So we wouldn't have another situation where the EA is on Senate and doing external and internal like last year. As per recommendation before we go to that, there was a point in there about the percentage that a board of director member needed for to be able to run for office. Last year, the board approved 75% as the average that you had to have in order to run for board. I brought that back down to 65%. It's currently 60%, but that I'm open to discussion if anyone wants to say anything about that. But I thought 75% was too high. 60% might be arguably too low. I know Ben, you were one of the board members last year who wanted 75%. There was also a recommendation from legal, I believe. Robert and Kaylee can likely clarify this, but the recommendation from legal was the removal of the recall process and to allow the board like us to remove another board member with a 2/3 majority vote. So to give some background to that, or Kelly or whoever.
Robert, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so if we look at boards in the province of Ontario, typically a board can remove its members with a vote. Typically, the vote is not just a simple majority, so 50% plus one. The most typical is 2/3 majority. And I'll use an example. Brock University had a board member. The board member was accused of something in the community. Brock had a board meeting, so they called an emergency board meeting. They then voted, and the process was over. So that's how it's sort of finalized. In our particular instance, what we would need to do is go through a process that would start in, let's say, September, and then conclude itself in the end of October. So it's a fairly long process if for example, it's not amicable on both sides. So just something that came to us from legal counsel. It came up with a past board in the past. So and the board at that time did not agree with that. So it's being presented again by Austin and the exec team.
Thank you, Robert. Austin, if you'd like to continue.
Yeah, so that is what is being brought forward currently as new changes to the bylaws. I have conferred with everyone else, like all the executives. We do this together. the full-time staff. So like myself, Robert Cayley, we were working together, Kate working together to do this. So we're on the same page of bringing this forward together. If anyone has questions, I'm good to respond.
Any questions, comments, or concerns for Austin? Seeing none, what's the, oh, of course, no, stop doing that right at the end. Oh my God. All right, go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess the first thing is like in regards to the grade requirements. You know, originally like we were gonna go for like 80% or something like that, and brought it down to 75, like kind of a as a middle ground. I think 65 is too low. You know, I think these are important positions, and showing that you know, I just think that academic merit is relevant merit in this case, because the core reason why we're at Brock is for academic reasons. So, you know, just to be at, you know, 75% or something, you know, shows you have a level of competence and everything, and so forth. So, you know, that's my first thought.
All right, thank you, Ben. Yasmin, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, just in response to Ben's comment, I disagree actually. I think that grades don't really show that much about someone's competence, I guess. A lot of people value different things, and sometimes school isn't a priority. And then there's other people that are excel at school, but when it came to, for example, COVID, or they might just have a class that they've struggled with, it might bring down their average. It doesn't mean that they're not a smart student or good in class, but it was just that one class that didn't allow them to run for board. Also, I think it's kind of contradictory to have the minimum requirement to run for a board position as 75, but then you can be an executive at a 60% average. That doesn't really make sense to me at all. I really don't think that grades should be that big of a factor. I think it's important that if someone's grades are like lower than 60 or 65, then yeah, maybe they should be focusing on that. Yeah, I think that 65 is a more appropriate number. I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts though. Thank you.
I think that was a phenomenal point brought up by Yasmin, that grades are not everything. I think a lot of Alex agrees with that in the chat. There's some similar stuff that Carly and Aisha are saying. I do think like it should have a little bit of a thing, but not that much, as Yasmin was saying. You know, if someone's grades are like that low, like I think we're essentially doing them a favor by not allowing them to be on board. Like, hey, you need to maybe like pass your classes. You should probably be focusing on that. I think Aisha said it here. 65 is a good baseline. I would agree with that. Carly, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of speak similarly to what Yasmin was saying. Obviously, academics are important, and that's, you know, we're all here as Brock students, but this isn't a role that is like, you know, honor society or even like Senate, where it's very specifically related to the academics. BUSU is more so related to the student experience, and I don't think it's fair to say that only the highest of achieving students are going to be able to relate to and competently like reflect and support the students, because sure, it you know, it's ideal and it may show things towards their I guess work habits and things, but you can also see that in many other ways other than just a grade. And it doesn't seem like that creating a higher cutoff point really does any good when we are going to be representing students who don't achieve those grades. And so like they're not less valuable as members of this organization or the school because they're not receiving those grades. Sure, they're not getting honor society and things like that, but I don't think cutting out the people that would be within that range benefits us really, when really it's like, okay, if they are proving that they're competent and have strong work habits and can run an election or whatnot outside of that, like that should be more so what we're focusing on. And I'll say like from personal experience, like I had a course I took over the summer that I got a concussion in, and the prof wouldn't answer me. And like I couldn't get the forms to fill it out because I had a concussion and we were all stuck online. So there was like no one to meet with. And I've like since figured that out, but I got a 0 in that class originally because I had to look up severe concussion. It was like my 9th concussion. And this prof that just would not answer a single email. And I don't think that an experience like that, which did obviously like negatively affect my average, meant that I was any less competent at being a director of the board. Like it just, I don't think, I think at some point, yes, if they, are on academic probation, they should be focusing on that. And we shouldn't be encouraging students to take on other roles that are going to be taking away from their academics. But I think if you put the threshold too high, we're going to be discounting students who have a lot to offer.
Thank you, Carly. I think the point of, I think BUSU not being the honor society and, we were focused on services in a way compared to like, instead of like academics. I think that's a very good point. I also think that, that if we're supposed to represent all students, just having the highest achieving of students isn't very representative. I think that's a very good point as well. Faison, if you'd like to go ahead, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of support what you said, like the grades don't really define anything, because let's be honest, if you look around the world, like a lot of the biggest businessmen, women, whatnot, they really haven't they haven't even been in school. And if you're just like someone that sits in the books and to be honest, like if you're in the 60s and below, chances are you're probably not going to apply for something like this. It's because you can't manage your own school and you're probably scared of dropping out or getting kicked out of your program to be able to even, get involved in this. So I feel like it should be lower. It can't get too high, because then you're removing a bunch of people. You're moving a bunch of people that, might have the potential. You got to understand that there's a lot of artistic students out there that might not do well in classes such as mathematics, right? But they have to take them because of their courses. So it'll affect their average overall, and then you'll be stuck, right? So like my thing is that we can use that artistic person, but we don't need their mathematical side, right? So that's the thing. I feel like it shouldn't be higher than 60. Like it's 60, it should be 60 and shouldn't be higher than that. You lose out on a chunk of students. And let's be honest, if you're looking at to pick up a 90% average student that you want to run for board, chances are they're not going to give their full 100% to board or anything, just because they care more about their average, the bursaries they're going to get, the scholarships that they're going to get over let's say board. Because at the end of the day, this is something that we volunteer to do, right? We're not gaining any monetary value, and they may gain monetary value through those bursaries and scholarships. So you got to think of it as a business as well, and from that perspective, right? So those 90% average students, you're not going to get them, right? You're going to get the mid-grade, like for me, for example, the average 76% student. So like the thing is I think it should be like that, and we shouldn't cut off a big chunk of students just like that. There's a lot of great students out there, and grades, yeah, they represent what you can do and follow it. They represent if you can follow instructions at the end of the day, but they don't represent your creativity or anything else other than that, or how you are outside of the world, in the world. So I think we should return that back to 60.
Thank you for that, Faison. I think this is one of the most engaging discussions we've had on any topic so far. This is a very good discussion. Everybody's bringing up some great points. Aisha, if you'd like to go ahead, feel free to do so.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you, James. This is a very creative and productive discussion. I do think, I'm not very sure of what the
general average to graduate or across most programs are. I think 65 is a safe boundary rather than 60. I understand that, there's a lot of things that happen, things change, classes affect, turn out differently. I do think 65 is a safe baseline to set for both positions, whether that's board or execs, because that way, whoever is coming into that position has a general idea of what it takes to balance things out and still do relatively okay in school. I don't know if it's a possibility, and maybe I just think too far sometimes, but we don't want someone turning back and saying, well, this role or this job that I took on or this volunteer position ended up being what was, detrimental to my academics. So when you say 65, you're counting on someone who is able to hold their own in any space. So whether that's academically, managing their own time, managing whatever it is they have going on in their life, I think that's a safe bet to work on. I think just adding on to that would be that when we are, for future purposes, advertising for people to run for the elections or get hired, whatever the process goes through, is just generally putting up a disclaimer of the time commitment that most of these roles require. A lot of people have the passion or the interest, but they're not very aware of how they plan on managing that. But I think 65 is generally a good baseline, because that way we know that no matter what, it would be very, very hard for us to be the reason why a student is not doing well, or they're getting close to failing, or they are being kicked out of the program. And I think it's a good baseline for a lot of programs before you get dropped out, unless you're in like a very extremely competitive program. But I think that's a good middle ground. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Aisha. Anybody else have any comments, concerns, or questions?
If there's a recommendation for it to go to 60, would somebody want to make a motion for that?
Okay, hold on. Ben's got something. Ben, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see the hand raise.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate everyone's thoughts. And I wasn't trying to suggest that people with lower averages aren't competent. I was just saying that it to kind of as Faizan mentioned, like to get a higher grade, you do have some skill, following instructions and so forth, and being organized. But anyways, yeah, I thought 75 was good, based on this and looking at other universities. I think there was like 175, 170 or something like that. So anyways, potentially, 70. What do people think about 70? Or what Aisha has said, 65. I just don't think we should go down to 60. That's my thoughts.
All right, I think somebody said in the chat that it shouldn't be higher than 70. If anybody else would like to put their thoughts in, you guys obviously raise your hand. Carly, you can go ahead first.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm far more in favor of 65. When I say like I wouldn't go higher than 70, like 70 included, like and obviously it's like we're not gonna say you have to have an average of 69%. So like I feel like 65 makes no sense. And I don't think it needs to be 70%. I do appreciate what Ben is saying, and like the fact that can be a marker for someone who has it together. But I also know students who are getting 90s and are coming home like distressed every day. Like it takes up all of their time to achieve those high grades, and they're holding themselves to a very high standard. And I know students who are getting like 65, 70s and have a bunch of volunteer positions and just like prioritize that they're getting, C's, get degrees. And like everyone's going to have their own different mentality on what their priorities are. But if someone is interested in making this volunteer role a priority and wants to represent students and wants to do it, like spend energy in these long ass meetings once or twice a month and commit to making this a better place for students, I don't think that 5% should be the cutoff of saying, hey, we don't think you've got what it takes.
Oh, and never mind, I muted myself. All right. Yasmin had her hand up. I guess not anymore. Aisha, you can go ahead again.
Yeah, I was just gonna agree with Carly. I appreciate Ben's idea. I personally understand that need to ensure that whoever is committing to that role is, able to hold their own, like I said earlier. But I think if we do a 65% and we put a disclaimer of the time commitment, that covers both sides of that concern. And like Alex has mentioned, quite a lot of people end up being on that 65 average. And I think 65 rather than 60 is, a safer bet of, if somebody does slip, they're in 60, they're in a safe range. If they wish to go higher, good for you. But, if you're in a 65 and something happens and you slip down to 60, you're not, some people panic, but you're not very on edge and like thinking life is falling apart. But going from a 60 to a 55 sounds a little scarier in my opinion. So 65 covers both bases. If we set it at 65, tell everybody, you apply for this job, we're expecting 40 hours. You apply for this job, you volunteer for this, we're expecting 3 hours. I think that communicates that, we are thinking about students, but we also want to encourage them to get involved. That way we're not discrediting the importance of academics, but also encouraging people to get involved.
All right, thank you, Aisha. Ben, is your hand up from earlier? If it is, you can, or if it's not, you can go ahead again. All right, Austin, you can go ahead.
Can I motion to amend? Wait, if I'm presenting this, do I have the motion or can I just say, or can I just switch it? How does that work with Robert's rules?
Robert, can you? No?
Yeah, so Austin, you're bringing the motion forward. The motion has not gone on the floor yet, so you need a mover and a seconder. So if you present, at any point in time when you present the motion formally, you can just present it and make the change. So you could say it's 65 if you want to make it 60, or if you may want to make it 70, you could just put that on the floor at that point in time, and we need a mover and a seconder. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's
All right.
helpful. James?
Before you go ahead, Austin, Kaylee was trying to make a poll. I can put a poll in our group chat right now if people want it.
Aisha, for your question, there's the exact requirement was 60%. If this goes forward with hiring, then at a later time, there would be a policy around hiring and the board would have to determine the percent requirement for execs. Right now, the 60% is for the Brock Senate representatives.
I created the poll regardless. If you guys want to go check the messenger group chat, I made a poll. Austin, you can go ahead and do whatever you want to do with your motion here. So yeah, Austin, if you'd like to.
Oh, I'm dumb and I didn't realize I was still muted. Sorry. I'm just gonna put forward the motion, be it resolved, the board approves the bylaw changes as presented, with the grade requirement being 60%, and sends it to referendum in the October by-election. And then James, I think, oh, Carly. Never mind, I was gonna say the need a seconder, but I think Carly put her hand up.
You're muted, James.
Yeah, I saw that. All right, 5 people answered the poll. I mean, Austin already changes, doesn't really matter. And the poll anyways is getting more traction towards 60. All right. We still got some more people with their hands up here. Ben, if you would like to speak, go ahead.
Thank you. On the note of executive averages, I thought that was also going to be changed as well. So I guess to Robert or Kaylee, was there a change made that we passed last year? That's what I remember.
I don't remember a change to the executives. That will be, it won't be relevant if this all passes though, because if we're moving towards hiring, there will be a hiring policy put in place, and in that policy, which the board will have to approve, you will dictate what the requirements will be for that position. And that's where you could put a grade requirement in there.
All right, Mark, you can go ahead. Mark, you're unmuted, but if you were speaking, I could not hear you. Oh, now you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
All right. Okay, so generally speaking, I like the entire motion. I think it's good. My one point that I would like some more elaborating on is the addition of Senate honorarium being allowed for board members. I'm not quite sure what the situation is there. If I could get some more information.
Yeah. Am I good, James?
Go ahead, Austin. Yeah.
So right now, currently under our bylaws, board members are not allowed to receive any type of remuneration, any type of fund, like whatever, like you're not allowed to get any money from BUSU of any kind. Right now, we have 2 board members who are sitting on Senate. Senate gets an honorarium from BUSU. Currently, I believe it's budgeted for $3,000. And under our current bylaws, the 2 board members who sit on Senate would not be allowed to get that funding. Which technically, just going to throw that out there, those 2 board members would, if they were approving this, just a heads up, they would also be approving you getting money. So just for your awareness, if you want to declare conflict, if that might be needed. I'm not sure. Robert might want to clarify.
Yeah,
that.
that's my so basically it's right now, to put it bluntly, like the students who are on Senate and on board are basically being like punished for being on board and aren't receiving the remuneration that other Senate students are receiving. And so this is basically to deal with that, rectify it.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So I just also thought of something else. I know we've done honorariums for USA delegates. I know last year Ayushi was a delegate while being a board member. Is that something we might want to add here? Austin, Kaylee, if you have an answer.
I'm happy to add that in as a friendly amendment if Kaylee, if you think that's needed, or Robert, if you think that's needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if they attend USAC, they should get the honorarium. And I can't remember what happened with Ayushi last year. I want to add a point though that, and it might solve this, is that these bylaw changes I sent to Matthew Lease to review, like we always do with our policies and our bylaws. So he's confirmed that he's received them and that he would need a few days to go through and make sure the changes look okay. I actually flagged that line for him about Senate because it's very specific to be in a bylaw. Like that almost seems like something that would be in a policy because bylaws are generally more vague. So I did ask him if there's a way to make that line more vague so that honorariums could be given out with making sure that board members weren't becoming employees, because that's what we were trying to avoid, board members on the governance side sitting on the crossing that line into operations. So he like that change is totally fine with me. He probably has a really nice way to word that sounds way better than anything that I could come up with. So if you're fine with that, I can add, I could say Senate and USA honorariums. Again, like we may need to expand that if eventually we become a member of CASA, and I'll work with Matthew to find some wording that kind of encompasses any type of honorarium, but doesn't open up for board members to be paid employees, if that's okay.
Austin?
Yep, that's friendly to me. However, Kaylee wants to do that.
All right, so for the motion, should it be pending review from legal?
Well, we do, so the process for referendums, what will happen is the elections committee will get together to draft the question and MOU to go along with this. And then the question and MOU and final bylaws will come to the board, or we can do it at BUSAC for final approval. So you guys will see it again before it goes to referendum. Basically, as long as we are okay with these changes in spirit, there may be some wordsmithing done to make them better, like legally, from Matthew. And I will make sure that gets presented, or somebody from the elections committee will make sure that it gets presented to the board in BUSAC before the referendum process starts.
I feel like I know this, but like I'm just kind of blanking. Just quickly, what's MOU again?
The memorandum of understanding. So usually if there's a fee referendum, there'll be a question, you know, do you approve this fee effective this date? And then there's an explanation of the fee and how it's spent and all the other different terms for that. For something like a bylaws MOU, we would basically summarize the changes. It would be very, very short. We would summarize the changes. There would probably be a link to the current bylaws, and then there would be a link to the full edited, updated bylaws. So we'll make sure that all the information gets out to the students if they want to go through and read it all. I imagine most of them are probably going to read a summary that explains the changes. So it's up to the elections committee. They are the ones who are tasked with making sure all that information is in that MOU, and then the board will approve it.
All right. Okay, that wraps up quite a bit there. Aisha, would you like to go ahead?
I think I was just going to say that, and I think that Kaylee's amendment kind of covers it, but I would rather much not have it be specific, just so it does not motivate anyone who's interested on being bored or who's interested on doing both, finding a way to get paid for both, just like as a precaution. So I feel like if it's board members are, you know, allowed to be paid or honorariums for other positions or other involvements that require them to receive an honorarium, they are allowed to do so, just so we're not motivating anyone to feel that they need to take both so that they can get money out of it, but just as a safeguard for that. But yes, that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Aisha. Ben, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess just based on what happened last year and when the board took a look at this, the initial proposal, we went through all of the changes like one by one. So we didn't vote on it until the second meeting. looking after there were some adjustments made, and it seems that there are going to be some adjustments based on what Kaylee said. So I wanted to recommend that we vote on the major changes one by one.
Austin, is that a friendly amendment?
No.
All right, would someone like to second Ben's suggestion? All right, seeing no one, that fails, and we'll move on. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, or concerns for Austin? Seeing none, please don't stick up a hand at the last second again. All right, so Carly would like to rescind herself as the seconder. And Mark has went ahead and said that he will second that for us. So be it resolved, the board approves the BUSU bylaw changes as presented with the board grade requirements set at 60% and sends it to the referendum in the October by-election. I think there's a few things in here that, do we need to fix the wording before we vote, or is it fine? Like
It should be fine.
Oh, sorry. I will.
Yeah.
You said 60%, right?
That should be 60. And then on top of that, it should say allowed. I don't really know if like grammatical mistakes don't really matter. Really,
Allowed where?
allowed.
Oh,
for-
allows. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I'm just being, I saw it. I had to say something.
No, it's fine.
All right. Do we have anybody abstaining? I'm assuming we might have 2 here or 3.
Ben, is your hand up to
Yeah.
abstain?
Yeah, so there was just, if I could just say that I, would prefer that it was 65, not 60, but I, as part of the thing, but I will abstain from the vote.
Okay. Can we just scroll through one more time? Just I want to read over this real
Yeah.
quick.
It's just this part. It's just this part, and then below is the next steps.
Okay. Damn. I get to vote here, right? Actually, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not saying.
No, Andrea didn't stay, did she?
And Andy doesn't have a vote regardless.
No, I know. That's what I'm trying to calculate. There's 10 voting members here, so no, sorry, you don't.
Cool. That's fine with me, honestly. All right. Anybody against? I honestly just wanted to know if because I think I was gonna abstain. That's fine. So nobody's against. That'll be 6-4. Nobody against. 3 abstentions. All right. Nice. Next is there even anything else on the agenda?
Nope, just roundtable. I think you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, are going to talk about the fall meeting. So I have a doodle set up here. I haven't sent it. Like I was making it. I think I was making it when campus security was talking to us. I was in here making one. So I made it where it's just blocks of 1 hour because I think it would have been a pain because like I wasn't gonna do like 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, right? Because what if like 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock works better? So I did it by groups of 1 hour, and then you can like pick like an hour at a time. Obviously, like even if you're only available for like 1 hour, a block of 1 hour, and like 2 hours preceding or after you're unavailable, still select it because there might not be like a chunk of 3 hours that everyone's available. So we might have to settle for like a chunk of 2 hours. So it's going to be a lot of box clicking. Also, it says that it's like the days next week. Like it says like September 4th, whatever. Just forget about the days. Just use like the days of the week. I don't know how to like only do days of the week. Honestly, Hannah, I looked up when to meet and I don't know what the hell is going on with that thing. I was trying to figure out. I looked it up. I honestly, this is not fun to make these things. It's so confusing. When to meet was confusing me too much, so I closed that tab real quick.
Why didn't you just get me to do it?
Oh, well, too late now. Well, I didn't want to be there. I'd be like, hey, I don't want to do this, so you can do it. Hannah, I already made the doodle. Okay. And I think like the 15-minute increments, I don't really think that's like super necessary, because at least like most people's schedules, like you're gonna have something that starts on the hour, like especially with classes. Aaliyah's not here, but like I don't think she's gonna have a practice that starts at 4:15. Like it'll start at 4. And actually I know that because like I hang out with her and her roommate all the time, and it's always lift at 5 or practice at 6. Like it's never like on. I don't really think the 15-minute increments are like needed. But yeah, so like I was saying, I have them as blocks of an hour. I know that the meeting's more than an hour. Just pick the 1 hour blocks, because, you know, we need to like, it's going to be like Tetris. It's not going to be fun. Yeah, Carly, just pick any. I put it really late and really early because I figured like there might not be a single time we're available. So it starts at 7 a.m. and it ends at like 11 p.m. I put a lot of rain. Hopefully we don't have to meet that late or that early. Oh, by the way, not starting at 11 p.m. It would be like ending at 11 p.m. I'm not starting past that time. Hopefully we don't have to meet that late or that early, but like if need be, like I feel like 7 a.m. is the earliest we should be going at. Yeah, 7 a.m. I know it's kind of ridiculous, but you never know. Yeah, so I'm gonna send that out. I'll send the link. I'm telling you, Aisha, I don't want 7 a.m., but I put it there because I have a bad feeling that like there's gonna be absolutely nothing common ground here. That is the last case scenario. At first, I had it starting at 8, and then I was like, you know what? Might as well just put this extra hour just in case. Okay. Ben, your hand is up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I guess just two things. Like for evenings, like should be better in general. Like I don't think we should shy away from that at all, because you know, it's common like practice for something like this, like with whether it's board or BUSAC. And obviously in general, classes are more so during the daytime. But other than that, I also just wanted to make sure that that Kaylee's involved with that, like with that poll and everything. You know, I want her to, you know, make sure that she's there to help you out, James. I just prefer to like that Kaylee be involved. I just want to make sure that happens. Thanks.
I mean, yeah, sure.
I'm always
Okay.
here.
Mark hasn't left yet. Mark, just so you know, all the times on this, unless your computer converts it, is Eastern Standard Time. So you can figure that out. I don't know what it's like, what, 11 a.m. where you're at right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyways, like, yeah, Ben, evenings preferable, but I just have a bad feeling that there is going to be no common ground between anyone's schedules. Oh, look at
We've had to, I know like in the past, we've had board availability that has been awful. So we would do one meeting on like a Monday morning, and then we'd alternate and do one like Thursday night so that everybody is able to attend at least like every other meeting. So, I mean, the board getting larger, I think, is a really great thing, but it also comes with some problems like scheduling 12 people and next year 13 people. So there is a possibility that not everyone is available for every meeting, but we'll figure it out. We'll make sure that everybody can attend at least every other meeting.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's kind of why I did it by an hour block, so that we can have as many options as possible. Aisha said, can we choose it? Yes, we're just choosing for the fall right now, because obviously you're gonna have different classes and stuff. Yeah, anyways, I think that's all I got for the doodle. I will send it out in a second if I figure out how to do that properly, because it was quite a pain setting it up. Any other anything anybody wants to share? This meeting was quite quick, guys. 3 hours and 59 minutes. Actually, we started at 6:05, 3 hours and 54 minutes, okay? And a 10-minute break in there. 3 hours, 44 minutes. Not bad. Anybody got anything to share?
No.
Yasmin,
No,
how'd you feel?
I'm just going to run to get some shawarma because I am hungry and I did not get to cook today. So I wish everyone a very good night and take care. And please, everyone, if you're not registered to volunteer, then please come out to all the events or as many as you can. Reshare all the posts, tell your friends about it. And yeah, Badger Fest. Woo! Take care, everyone.
I have something to share. If you guys go check out Brock Campus Store, they posted me. I was in the video. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a model now. So all right.
All right. Bye,
Anybody
everyone.
got anything else?
Residences are moving in. If you do have some time, anytime between Saturday and Sunday, please, 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 please come help out an hour, 2 hours, please. That would be very fun. Also, just like wear your Boosie jersey.
Yeah,
Have
me-
students just be like, what are you doing?
Me, Yasmin, and Austin are coming. I know that for sure.
Okay, I will see you guys then.
Good days.
Aisha, I'll have my golf cart too, so we'll be able to help out with like loading some items for the students. So
You guys are angels. I
And we're
look
gonna-
forward to seeing you around.
We're definitely bringing the megaphone too, eh?
Yes, change the vibes up. I love it.
if you want us to bring the megaphone and a speaker, we can. But I don't know if you guys want that kind of energy. We'll see.
Maybe not. Maybe,
Yeah.
but I don't know about my RLCs. So golf cart is great. It's a great start. Yeah.
Yeah, no, golf cart will definitely be there. And we're very happy to help. So
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Somebody want a motion to adjourn? Boom, Carly. Okay, Austin's not here to do it. Boom. Okay, there we
I
go.
was just gonna